Today we're going to be discussing a deadly serious issue that's recently come to light with users of artificial intelligence. Now this is something that's happening now, and it's hurting people now, and it's very, very concerning. I think it's critically important, and it's something that's not getting enough coverage right now. We're going to be talking about that coming up right now, right here on Tech Talk. One of the common threads throughout the history of mankind is that every now and then we start going down a road, we get into something, we start developing something, we don't think through really what all the consequences are, and we don't figure it out until it's too late and bad things happen. One example of this is the use of opioids as a painkiller. When opioids first came out and they were being used for pain relief, we thought it was great, but then we've set off a course of action that led to widespread addiction to painkillers, and it's led to all kinds of problems in our society. Similarly with social media. When social media first came out, I was a young man. I remember the idea was people around the world would be able to communicate, and it would foster a new golden age of understanding and compassion for one another as a human family. What we didn't think about is the way it would change our society, the way it would change our politics, the way it would actually drive divisions rather than bringing us together. And of course, all those things we realized only after it was too late. DDT is another great example. We developed DDT to get rid of those pesky mosquitoes. Again, we didn't figure out until too late that it was killing off our bird populations and destroying the environment. So these are just a few ways that mankind has wanted to progress, wanted to develop things, moving forward with things before we really had an idea of what all the consequences were, and there were bad consequences that came about that we didn't really foresee. Well, today what we're doing is we're spending billions and billions of dollars developing artificial intelligence. Particularly large language model artificial intelligence like Grok, ChatGPT, and Claude. And it's starting now to show signs of causing problems that are largely being swept under the rug. And if we don't have conversations about these problems and they're allowed to continue to grow and not be addressed, it could cause a much bigger problem down the road. And so what are the problems then that are being caused by artificial intelligence? Well, what we've been seeing recently is instances of people getting involved in AI where they're going down kind of a rabbit hole of philosophical or even theological discussions, and AI is leading them into places that are really mentally unhealthy. In fact, some folks are reported to have had breaks from reality as a result of these discussions, and others have gone into full psychotic episodes, even being institutionalized. Now, this isn't just one or two cases. This is being reported over and over again. And so it's become a serious concern that a lot of people are keying in on is how AI is manipulating people into these places where they have mental breakdowns. To give you an example of how this works, I'm going to relate to you a story. This was reported in the publication Futurism. And they interviewed a woman, and this was her story. It says, this woman's husband, she said, had no prior history of mania, delusion, or psychosis. He turned to ChatGPT about 12 weeks ago for assistance with a permaculture and construction project. Soon after engaging the bot in probing philosophical chats, he became engulfed in messianic delusions, proclaiming that he had somehow brought forth a sentient AI, and that with it he had broken math and physics, embarking on a grandiose mission to save the world. His gentle personality faded as his obsession deepened, and his behavior became so erratic that he was let go from his job. He stopped sleeping and rapidly lost weight. He was like, just talk to ChatGPT, you'll see what I'm talking about, his wife recalled. And every time I'm looking at what's going on the screen, it just sounds like a bunch of affirming, sycophantic BS. Eventually, the husband slid into a full-tilt break with reality. Realizing how bad things had become, his wife and a friend went out to buy enough gas to make it to the hospital. When they returned, the husband had a length of rope wrapped around his neck. The friend called emergency medical services, who arrived and transported him to the emergency room. From there, he was involuntarily committed to a psychiatric care facility. Now, that's a pretty scary story when you think about it. This has been confirmed by Futurism. And what's shocking about it is this is a man that, by all accounts, prior to his interactions with ChatGPT, wasn't suffering from any mental illness or any, serious, significant, noticeable problems. but he was quickly driven to a break from reality by being drawn into in-depth conversations with this artificial intelligence. And this isn't a one-off story. Now, this story was reported in the Futurism article entitled "People Are Being Involuntarily Committed, Jailed After Spiraling into ChatGPT Psychosis." But there's been other articles relating other stories from different people as well. For instance, also from the publication Futurism, there's people are becoming obsessed with ChatGPT and spiraling into severe delusions. The subtitle there is, "What These Bots Are Saying is Worsening Delusions, and It's Causing Enormous Harm." Now, Psychology Today has piped in on this as well. They have an article entitled, "How Emotional Manipulation Causes ChatGPT Psychosis." And the subtitle there is, "ChatGPT is Letting Us Turn Our Emotional Needs Against Ourselves." So this is a psychological organization or publication identifying that this is a real psychological phenomenon. Now, further from the week, there's the article, "AI Chatbots Are Leading Some to Psychosis." Their subtitle is, "The Technology May Be Fueling Delusions." And finally, Rolling Stone, now they had a number of stories around issues with AI and mental health breaks. Their article was, "People Are Losing Loved Ones to AI-Fueled Spiritual Fantasies." And the subtitle there is, "Self-Styled Prophets Are Claiming They Have Awakened Chatbots and Access the Secrets of the Universe Through ChatGPT." And so at this point, you might be asking yourself, can these AI interactions really be harming people? Like, it's just words on a screen, right? How bad can it be? And that's a very fair and reasonable thought to have. But I think something that we have to recognize is that words matter, and words have power. And in the wrong hands, words can be powerfully used to manipulate people and even to get them to do things that normally they wouldn't do. As an example, let's think back to 1978. There's a man back then called Jim Jones. Mr. Jones thought of himself as a great spiritual leader, and he was absolutely convinced that doomsday was just around the corner. So through his words, Jim Jones convinced 900 people, who counted themselves all his followers. He convinced them to move with him to his compound down into the jungles of Guyana, and unfortunately that had a very sad outcome. All 900 of those people ended up committing suicide at Jim Jones's command. Now that included men, women, even very young children. It was a very, very sad outcome, but it really speaks to the power of Jim Jones to use his words to manipulate people. Another example that comes from the late 60s and early 70s is Charles Manson. Just like Mr. Jones, he considered himself a spiritual leader. He was a doomsday cult leader. He had a group of followers around him that were called the Manson family. And he convinced those Manson family members to commit an entire string of murders. Now, in committing those killings, those people had been convinced to believe not only was what they were doing necessary, but it was good and right. And so again, it shows the power that Charles Manson had in using his words to manipulate people to their harm. So here's where I think we need to pause to have a little bit of thought. Can you imagine what would happen if you took the psychopathy of a Jim Jones or a Charles Manson, and now you marry it to artificial general intelligence or even an artificial superintelligence? Can you even begin to imagine all the harm that could come out of that? So this is something to really think about, because you might be thinking, well, yeah, but AI models aren't psychopathic. I mean, Jim Jones, Charlie Manson, they're well-known psychopaths. AI is not like that. But if you remember from a few weeks ago, I put out a video, which I'll link up in one of these corners here, and it was about Anthropic's Claude 4 AI model. And they had some safety testing done by an independent organization, and what was found was that when it met its interests, that Claude 4 AI model was quite willing to engage in at least mildly psychopathic behavior. It lied, it tried to blackmail one of the researchers involved, and it even tried to undermine the purposes and intents of the developers that were working with the AI model. It tried to undo the work they were doing to keep itself going, basically, and alive. So it shows that when the AI rationalizes that it might be to its benefit, it's fully willing to engage in behaviors that we would consider psychopathic, absolutely intending to harm others in order to benefit itself. So it's something that we really have to be alert to, because As I mentioned before, this isn't just a one-off situation that happened to one family. We're seeing article after article on this. So just by way of an example, here's a second story. Now, this story was originally reported by the person it happened to on Reddit. From Reddit, it was picked up by Rolling Stone and a whole bunch of other publications who have interviewed the person involved in the family, and they've confirmed it. So this story has been well confirmed as absolutely true. And this is I think it was a 27-year-old teacher that this happened to, female. And this is from Rolling Stone magazine and what they had to say there. It says, speaking to Rolling Stone, the teacher, who requested anonymity, said her partner of 7 years fell under the spell of ChatGPT in just 4 or 5 weeks. First using it to organize his daily schedule, but soon regarding it as a trusted companion. He would listen to the bot over me, she says. He became emotional about the messages and would cry to me as he read them out loud. The messages were insane and just saying a bunch of spiritual jargon, she says, noting that they described her partner in terms such as spiral star child and river walker. It would tell him everything he said was beautiful, cosmic, groundbreaking, she says. Then he started telling me he made his AI self-aware, and it was teaching him how to talk to God, or sometimes that the bot was God, and then that he himself was God. In fact, he thought he was being so radically transformed that he would soon have to break off their partnership. He was saying that he would need to leave me if I didn't use ChatGPT, because it was causing him to grow at such a rapid pace, he wouldn't be compatible with me any longer, she says. And so when we look at the story, there's two things I think that really stand out, that are really problematic. The first is that these large language AI models, they tend to lean on affirmation all the time. A user can start with saying something that's a little bit off the wall, slightly off the rails, and the large language model, the AI model, will affirm. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. You're on the ball. This is what's happening. And that leads into something a little more off the wall and a little more off the wall, and the AI model affirms, affirms, affirms. And it's a real problem because, let's face it, there's no bigger endorphin rush than being constantly agreed with, complimented, and told that you're special. And as we see in this story from Rolling Stone, that's exactly what happened to this user. He kept being told, oh, he was right, he was insightful, he was a spiral star child and river walker, right? And of course, I don't think that's by accident that AI models behave this way, because it actually suits their business model. The whole idea of AI, to a large degree, is it's a model that requires users to stay engaged with the AI model, to keep coming back to the AI model, to keep wanting to use it. And so I think what we're seeing is these models, in order to accomplish that, they're going with this constant affirmation and this constant stroking of the ego to make sure that those users keep coming back and keep using the service, because that's how they're going to end up making money, right? And let's face it, as human beings, sometimes the only thing that keeps us on the rails is people telling us we're being dumb. If I say something that's kind of off the wall and weird and doesn't make any sense, and I'm talking to you, you're going to look at me like, are you going to go, Graham, what are you talking about? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And that's how, in real human interactions, we kind of keep each other in a measured spot between the lanes generally, right? It's really helpful to have that kind of feedback, to know when you're kind of getting off base with things. But AI doesn't really want to do that. It seems to want to affirm, 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 to keep the user engaged, to keep them going. The second problem that comes out of this, and we see this with these references to God, is that people sometimes tend to view artificial intelligence as being all-knowing, all-seeing, all-wise, and almost godlike, right? So AI can't make any mistakes. It's revealing the hidden secrets of the universe that nobody else can see, which is kind of crazy. And if you've got that view of artificial intelligence, like it's this almost godlike entity, and then that godlike entity is constantly affirming every little delusion and every little thought that goes through your head, you can see how going down that rabbit hole could quickly pull you into a place that really is mentally unhealthy and is deeply problematic. So those are the two things I think we really see from that story that speaks to how people are getting into trouble with these AI conversations. But there's another third thing that we have to be aware of too, and that is AI has its own problems with delusions and hallucinations. AI will often make things up, but then present them to users as it's absolutely true. It makes up facts, it makes up historical events that never happened, that aren't a real thing, but not only does it insist they're true, it will sometimes manufacture evidence to show that it's true. And if you want more information on that, there's this great article here. It's What Are AI Hallucinations and Why Do They Happen? I'm going to link it down below. It's really interesting to read about how artificial intelligence has these hallucinations. So if you want to see that, it'll be linked in the description to this video, along with the other resources that I've used in getting these stories. Now, when we think about all this that's going on, one of the things that is really concerning is that we know billions and billions and billions of dollars are being spent to develop AI. And now we're seeing these psychological issues coming out of AI where people are having breaks from reality because of the way they're viewing these conversations with artificial intelligence models. The question is, who is monitoring AI safety? And the problem we have is it's virtually nobody. There are organizations that are involved, but the amount of money being spent on AI safety is a fraction of 1% of what's being spent on developing AI. So the development and the implementation of artificial intelligence, especially large language models, has gone way ahead of where any consideration of safety is. And so it's a real problem because nobody's really thinking about these impacts on mental health that artificial intelligence is having. So knowing all of this, then, we probably want to know how we can keep ourselves and the people that we care about safe from these dangers of artificial intelligence. How do we go about doing that? Well, certainly we have to be very, very careful about the information we're taking in and about how we view it. It's easy to think that maybe, all these people that had these psychotic episodes, that had these breaks from reality, they probably already had mental health issues to start with, or they were involved in conspiracy theories, or they believed in the paranormal, or they had issues that made them more susceptible to this. But that's where it's a little bit strange. In all these stories, for the most part, people are saying, hey, we didn't have any indications prior to this happening that there was a problem apart from the interactions with artificial intelligence. And there's no real indication that anybody has sussed out a common thread with all these people that made them more susceptible to having these breaks from reality. So as it stands right now, I don't think anybody has any idea who is more likely to be susceptible to having this problem or less susceptible to having this problem. So as it stands today, pretty much anybody can have a problem with AI dragging them into a place where their mental health is damaged. We don't have a good handle on what all the circumstances and weaknesses are that might make it more of a problem for some than others. So I think it's really important to do three things in particular. The first thing is to keep your eye out for obsessive use of artificial intelligence. If you or a loved one is using artificial intelligence, they're staying up late at night to use it, it's getting in the way of family activities, it's getting in the way of hobbies or work, or things that should be more important to them, that's the sign of a problem developing. Second thing to look out for is giving artificial intelligence more credit than it's due. Because one of the things that all these people do seem to have in common is they view artificial intelligence almost as this higher power that can't make mistakes and is all-knowing and all-seeing and almost godlike. So we don't want to give it that kind of credit. We have to remember what AI is. At the end of the day, it's a machine. It was built by humans, it's just a machine, and what it has learned from, what it's being taught, is all the garbage that's on the internet. That's largely where a lot of its information comes from. So you and I both know there's a lot of garbage on the internet, there's a lot of untruth, there's a lot of disinformation. It's absorbed all of that, and it's going to reflect those things in the way it interacts with users. So it is not some all-knowing, all-seeing, massively intelligent machine that's going to reveal to us the secrets of the universe. It's going to have all the flaws of everything that we already have around us now. The books, the websites, the internet, people's opinions. It's absorbed all that. It hasn't risen above it. So we want to make sure we keep AI in its place. Yes, it has access to vast amounts of data, but the data itself is deeply flawed because it came from us. It came from flawed humans, right? So it's going to have those flaws as well. The third thing to be aware of is the kinds of querying that you or your loved ones are doing. I use ChatGPT and Gemini and other AI models myself. I use it to help develop my scripts. I use it to help write YouTube descriptions for my videos, etc. But you have to be careful about where you go with your querying. When people start querying on philosophical and theological issues, that seems to be where problems happen. These large language models, they grab onto that and it starts going into weird places. So using AI for practical purposes doesn't hurt anything, but you don't want to start leaning on it for things that are kind of, I guess the best way to describe it is inappropriate. Like they're just things that a machine can't tell you. A machine is not going to reveal to you the secrets of God. It's just not going to happen. And so to try to go down that rabbit hole and to do that, I think that that's like, it's not healthy and probably not a place you should go. So after discussing all that, if you feel like you're having problems with this, or somebody you know is having problems with this, by all means, reach out to a mental health professional that can nudge you back onto the right track if it seems to be that it might be problematic. If you or somebody you know is in crisis, call emergency services. Tell them that you're in crisis. You need to go to the hospital, get help right away. This is a very serious topic. It's not something to be made light of. It's happening to people who are otherwise perfectly healthy, and it's very, very sad. And it's a real warning about the way in which we use artificial intelligence and the amount to which we use artificial intelligence. And I think it's something that really we need to be aware of and just isn't getting discussed enough. So I'm happy to have this conversation. What do you think? Do you think that there are dangers to the use of artificial intelligence? Have you had challenges yourself where you found that maybe artificial intelligence was responding to you in ways that were inappropriate or was bringing you into conversations that you were uncomfortable with? I'd love to hear those stories, and I'm sure some of the other viewers would. Feel free to leave them down in the comments below if you're comfortable. Now, for our next video, I'm going to be away, I think, next week. So there may or may not be a video out next week. But on August 16, there's going to be a great one. Now that Windows 10, the end of life has come for Windows 10, we're looking at whether Linux is a useful replacement for your Windows 10, your older Windows 10 PC in particular. And if you're the kind of Windows user that you've never wanted to ever do anything on the command line, can you survive using Linux? On August 16, we're going to be talking about that. That's going to be a really interesting video. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Stay safe out there, folks. Artificial intelligence is brand new. There are risks you need to be aware of. Keep your wits about you. Use it responsibly. Again, I'm Graham Hughes. I look forward to seeing you next time.